Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel, so if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, have no worries. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review. Well, the number just keeps on rising. 529 Israelis have now been diagnosed with coronavirus in the state of Israel, according to the Israeli Health Ministry. And the jump comes after more than 2,200 coronavirus tests were administered yesterday.
כראש הממשלה, אני חייב להגיד לכם את האמת. לשמחתי, עוד לא איבדנו אף אחד. אבל זה לא יימשך.
Right now, 6 of the patients are seriously ill, and all are elderly and had existing medical conditions before contracting the disease. The hospitals treating them say their conditions have seriously deteriorated, with 2 now unconscious and hooked up to respirators. The good news is that the overwhelming majority, 498 patients, are only exhibiting light symptoms. 13 Israelis are in moderate condition and 12 have recovered, and 279 are currently hospitalized. 86 are receiving care at home. Right now, 36 Israelis are being treated in Israel's coronavirus hotels in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, which have opened their facilities for patients to recover. And Israel's Mossad intelligence service has just brought an estimated 100,000 coronavirus tests into Israel from abroad last night. And there are plans to bring more. The intelligence agency has apparently located roughly 4 million test kits from several unidentified countries, which will be brought into Israel down the line. Now, this comes after an announcement last night that the Defense Ministry will be taking over for the Health Ministry when it comes to finding and purchasing all equipment necessary to combat the coronavirus.
וזו מגפה באמת קשה. זה לא משחק ילדים, זה לא חופש גדול, זה עניין של חיים או מוות.
Well, 95,000 Israelis have now filed for unemployment yesterday, joining more than 225,000 others since the start of March. Now, in the meantime, the Israeli government is still mulling a total lockdown of the state of Israel. The health ministry says that it won't be necessary if the public abides by existing regulations and only leaves their homes for essential services like buying food, medicine, going to work, or seeking medical care. ILTV's Aaron Porras has the details.
وباء منتشر، الأسواق كلها مقفلة، يعني تمضية وقت بنلعب في الوقت بدل الضائع، بس يعني إنه بنطلع من هالبيت شوي ونتحوج للبيت وجينا بس هوينا الدكان ونسكر ونروح.
But the mayor of Jerusalem says that a full coronavirus lockdown is expected within just 2 days, and the city is preparing for it. It's believed that the only major difference between the current situation in Israel and a total lockdown would be its enforcement by the Israeli police. In the meantime, a hotline has just been established for the tens of thousands of Israelis who are stuck abroad due to flight cancellations amid the outbreak, and the organization Israel is collaborating with the Foreign Ministry to answer all questions on the hotline that Israelis may have, including whether or not to eat in restaurants, insurance reimbursements, and how to find flights back to Israel, and how to protect themselves from the coronavirus while abroad.
Hundreds of Israelis stranded in Peru are going to be departing on a flight back to Israel today for free with El Al Airlines, and the Foreign Ministry is calling on all Israelis abroad to book flights home immediately, hinting that Israel may in fact choose to close its borders entirely. Now, a ministry spokesman says that Israelis abroad shouldn't expect the country to provide free charter flights like the flight to Peru if a decision is made to halt all air traffic. Now, the Israeli Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan is instructing the Israeli police to prepare for a complete lockdown of the country, saying that it may be inevitable. Israel's police force is scaling up its efforts to make sure that Israelis abide by the rules of social distancing, and police say that they've begun to enforce 3 new emergency decrees. 1, self-isolation orders. 2, the requirement to register with the health ministry after returning to Israel from abroad. And then finally, 3, stopping public gatherings. Israel's latest regulations have demanded that Israelis not leave their homes unless they're going to buy food or medicine or still have the right to go to work. But these are technically only lawful instructions according to the police, and violating them is not a crime. The health ministry says they're working to make the instructions legally mandatory, and for now, police say they're beginning to launch criminal investigations into offenders of self-quarantine. Violating home quarantine can carry a maximum of up to 6 months in prison
and a $1,300 fine. Failing to register with the health ministry after returning from abroad can cost you a fine of up to $780, and refusing to disperse a gathering that has more than 10 people can also cost you that same amount of money. So far, 72 cases have been opened against violators, and right now police and the health ministry have begun enforcing self-quarantine orders with phone calls and surprise home visits, about 40 a day. Tens of thousands of Israelis are currently in isolation, and police officials say that 95 to 99% of them are obeying orders.
Well, for the first time ever, police have filed charges against a person for breaking quarantine and going out for at least 3 times despite being ordered to stay isolated. And police are seeking to have that very person stay behind bars without bail. Now, the latest reports by the Israeli government believe the coronavirus crisis could last for up to a year, and Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan is requesting that police and security chiefs urgently present a detailed plan for implementing a countrywide lockdown in which the police would be placed in charge of enforcement and the IDF Home Front Command would be in charge of the supply of essential items. Now, the Israel Defense Forces are looking to adapt their summer cage orders, which are prepared in the event of a wide-scale earthquake. They'd allow the IDF to help the Israeli medical system by possibly setting up hospitals and taking in patients. Now, amidst high controversy over the potential for abuse, Israel has also started its cyber surveillance of the entire general public in order to slow the spread of the deadly coronavirus.
של הנדבקים. התחלנו היום להפעיל את הטכנולוגיה הדיגיטלית שמאתרת את האנשים שבאו במגע עם חולי הקורונה. נודיע לאנשים אלה להיכנס לבידוד של 14 יום. אלה צפויים להיות מספרים גדולים, אפילו גדולים מאוד, ואנחנו נודיע על כך כבר בימים הקרובים. הכניסה לבידוד לא תהיה המלצה, היא חובה, ואנחנו נאכוף אותה בדרך ללא פשרות.
Using Israeli cell phones, the Shin Bet has been given permission to retrace the steps of coronavirus carriers, and the tracking will continue for the next 30 days. But the plan is already working. In just 24 hours, authorities have been able to inform over 400 new people via text message that they must enter quarantine as soon as possible. And as per previous directives, quarantine breakers face heavy fines and even possible jail time. Still, in spite of these efforts and ethical assurances from Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan, many are questioning the legality of this measure, and the High Court is now set to hear at least 3 petitions against the Shin Bet for its surveillance, which was allowed by an interim government and without the permission of the Knesset. Also, petitioners are arguing that aside from allegedly violating human rights, the new surveillance could be a political power move and could put sensitive information in the hands of people who shouldn't have it, like workers within the health ministry who are cooperating with the Shin Bet.
Moving on, new directives to protect the country's economy are also being updated regularly. As Israel implements even more restrictions surrounding the coronavirus pandemic, the Israeli economy is taking a hit. But it looks like the finance ministry has just reached an agreement to provide $817 million in relief for businesses that are feeling the heat most. Under the latest outline, most payments to the government will be postponed, including value-added taxes, income and property taxes, and electricity and water bills. These measures are still pending approval by the Prime Minister, though, and they would most likely take effect until the end of April or mid-May. Self-employed workers would receive compensation of between $1,000 to $1,900 each, which would add up to a total national distribution of $68 million. And the Israeli government is also stepping up its loans to small businesses and easing trade regulations. Government workers in non-essential departments will be placed on leave under terms that have not yet been decided. The Bank of Israel is also now taking a series of measures to mitigate damage to the economy caused by the spread of the virus. The bank will be buying government bonds at different maturities in the open market to help counteract the volatility in the market. And Israel's banks will also be offering a delay in mortgage payments for a few months, loans to small and mid-sized businesses, and expanded digital services for remote transactions.
Israel's premier airline El Al has now put around 5,500 workers on paid leave now that its labor union has just given up opposition to the move.
Travel and tourism to Israel has essentially come to a complete halt because of the coronavirus pandemic. And now El Al Airlines will be reducing its passenger flights to only 4 a day. 2 flights to New York or New Jersey, 1 to Paris, and 1 to London, plus 1 weekly flight each to Toronto and Johannesburg. The finance ministry has ordered El Al to cut yearly costs by $200 million through layoffs and salary reductions in order to be able to receive a loan. El Al carries more than just passengers, though. It's also responsible for bringing in around 35% of all of Israel's aerial imports and exports. Around 2/3 of Israel's exports are carried by plane and around 1/3 of all imports. Despite cuts, the Israeli Foreign Ministry is on a mission to return all young Israelis outside of the country back home. El Al is sending a plane to Peru on Thursday to return young post-army Israelis who are stranded there now that the country's borders are closed because of the coronavirus. It's estimated that around 1,000 Israelis are still in the South American country right now. The young people will be brought to Israel free of charge. The Foreign Ministry has already returned 380 Israeli students from Moldova on 2 Israel flights and is warning that the island of Luzon in the Philippines will close its borders on March 19th, where many Israeli tourists often travel.
Now, amidst the near-daily updates to coronavirus regulations, politicians in the newly minted 23rd Knesset are still trying to put together a government. Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein has announced that in spite of the spreading pandemic, the 23rd Knesset will still be inaugurated Monday, and President Reuven Rivlin will likewise begin meeting with the various parties to get recommendations for a potential prime minister, while Prime Minister Netanyahu is playing the field by focusing on preparing for fourth elections while also pushing for majority coalition to prevent another vote. But rather than trying to poach from the center-left parties, the premier is now advocating for a national unity government partnered with all the center-left parties. He says he's calling on his colleagues Benny Gantz, Avigdor Lieberman, and Amir Peretz to join him, form a coalition, and take on the emergencies pressing the nation. And the offer includes 2 options. The first is a 6-month emergency government focused on addressing the coronavirus and passing an updated budget. And at the end of the 6 months, the country would return to our current situation. Then the second option is a fully fledged 4-year rotational government in which Netanyahu would serve for the first 2 years as prime minister, followed by Benny Gantz for the latter 2. The joint Arab list, however, was not invited. So will Gantz take Netanyahu's offer? Well, as of now, maybe he won't need to. To prevent fourth elections, both the Joint List and Avigdor Lieberman have now officially recommended Benny Gantz for prime minister in meetings with President Rivlin, meaning that a center-left minority government, propped up by majority Arab parties from the outside, could be on the horizon for the first time in Israel's history. At the very least, Benny Gantz will likely receive the first mandate from President Rivlin to try and form such a coalition. What still remains to be seen, however, is whether or not the Knesset would reject such a government with a vote of no confidence. Now finally, as for Prime Minister Netanyahu's pending trial, it was set for March 17th, but amidst the new coronavirus guidelines, it has been delayed until May 24th. Now, in spite of earlier expectations, Israeli President Reuven Rivlin is officially giving Benny Gantz the first mandate to form a coalition.
החוק נותן בידיך, אדוני, 28 ימים, החל ממחר, למלאכת הרכבת הממשלה. זהו זמן קצר.
Blue and White Party leader Benny Gantz has received exactly 61 recommendations from the majority Arab Joint List, the Israel Beitenu Party, and Labor Gesher Meretz, giving President Rivlin an easy choice and handing Gantz the chance to negotiate a government. The news does come as a bit of a shock, though, as both he and Israel Beitenu leader Avigdor Lieberman have previously refused to be reliant on the Joint List. The Joint List until now has likewise been unwilling to give its full support, with Balad, one of the 4 parties within the Joint List, refusing to recommend Gantz. But both the entire Joint List and Lieberman are tipping the scales, while rejecting calls by Prime Minister Netanyahu for a secular unity government. In one of 2 options, the other being a 4-year rotational government, Netanyahu is pushing for an emergency 6-month coalition to deal with the coronavirus and pass a new budget. After the 6 months, we would return to the way things are now. While Lieberman and others may be blowing Netanyahu off for supposedly playing political games, but Rivlin is taking the offer seriously. The president has invited both Gantz and Netanyahu to his residence in Jerusalem in efforts to encourage an emergency unity government between the country's 2 largest factions. Following the meeting, the Likud and Blue and White parties are promising to meet soon and continue direct talks.
The 23rd Israeli Knesset has been officially sworn in.
40 back-to-back groups of 3 lawmakers at a time took their oaths of office at the Knesset's main hall on Monday, and Blue and White Chair Benny Gantz is now looking to the members of this new body to form a coalition. But who's in this new government, and how different is it from the 21st and 22nd Knessets, which both formed and disbanded in just the past 11 months? Well, 112 of the 120 Knesset members from the last election will continue to serve, and it includes 30 women, up from 28 after the vote in September. As for who will join the coalition, well, Benny Gantz has been officially tapped by President Reuven Rivlin to be the first to try and form a new government, and he's already reportedly received the support of the Labor Gesher Meretz party and the Israel Beitenu party under Avigdor Lieberman. The joint list, meanwhile, will give support for the formation of a government from the outside, meaning we would have a coalition of less than the 61-seat majority that's reliant on the support of the majority Arab joint list faction, which is not supported by all the new MKs in the left. Well, Blue and White number 2 Yair Lapid explains that this is the only option, accusing Prime Minister Netanyahu of not being serious about forming a unity government under Blue and White's leadership. Also, Lapid says that contrary to concerns, the joint list would only be needed once to form the coalition, after which they would not hold any power over the government. Still, critics argue that that's simply not true, and with the right-wing and religious bloc refusing to deal with Gantz independent of Netanyahu, it's highly likely that the Knesset will pass a vote of no confidence, throwing us back into fourth elections anyhow. In fact, the Prime Minister's Likud party is reportedly already preparing for that eventuality.
For those of you who are worried about prices skyrocketing in local grocery stores and pharmacies as people flood them, there is some good news. The economy minister has just announced that the price of hand sanitizer is not to exceed $2.70 per every 100 milliliters. The supermarkets Rami Levi, Shufersal, B, Yohananoff, Yeinot Bitan, Victory, and Superfarm will all be selling hand sanitizer for this new price, and some stores may also be limiting the number of hand sanitizers that can be bought at a time, and others will be selling 500 milliliter bottles for $5.40 or less. Producers of the product are stressing that there will not be a shortage of sanitizer, and that even though some stores have run out, shelves will be replenished in the coming days. Now, we're seeing more and more people wearing face masks on the street to avoid breathing airborne coronavirus particles, but as we've learned, face masks often are not effective at all. Now, a new Israeli-developed face mask may soon be available to the public, though, and it could change the game completely. Today, even N95 masks cannot fully block tiny coronavirus particles, and they definitely can't kill them. And some even stay on the mask's surface and pose a hazard when being handled and thrown away. Plus, face masks don't cover your eyes, which provide another route for the virus to enter the body. The new Israeli-developed ViriMask protective ocular respirator, however, offers what is believed to be a safer alternative. It's strapped around the head, and it covers not only the mouth and nose with a filtering mechanism, but also the eyes with a see-through visor. And it can be washed and reused, and the filters must be replaced after about 12 hours of use. Now, the patent-pending ViriMask isn't available to the public yet, but it should go through testing by mid-April, and it's expected to cost around $50 once it's on the market. An Israeli physician, Dr. Noam Gavrieli, is behind the device, which he says could provide a way out of isolation for many, since it can be safely used to go to work, to drive, and even to talk. So once government approved, Dr. Gavrieli is hoping to produce up to 100,000 units per day within just 4 months. Okay, so this next story is a bit funny because it's a cautionary tale against both panicking from coronavirus and, of course, thievery. Now, coronavirus headlines are plastered across the world media, giving way to both legitimate fears and complete melodrama. So terrified that the end of the world is near, an anonymous Israeli is now trying to balance out his karma by returning a 2,000-year-old artifact that he had stolen from the city of David 15 years ago as a, quote, rebellious youth. Using a go-between, the Israeli man has now returned a ballista stone. It was taken from the archaeological site of the Jerusalem Walls National Park. And the ballistae were ancient weapons used to hurl stones at fortresses, so the stolen stone was likely flung at the walls of Jerusalem by the Romans around 70 CE when they destroyed the city. Finally, though, while this story ended up with a happy ending, the IAA repeats what should be obvious. Uzi Rothstein, inspector with the Antiquities Authority Robbery Prevention Unit, explains that disconnecting an artifact from its archaeological framework by removing it negatively impacts research and the ability to piece together its historical puzzle. So basically, stop doing it. Now, in the midst of crisis, there is always a glimmer of light, and so here to share with us some of the lighter news around the coronavirus outbreak, we're joined by ILTV's Nittany Manson. Nittany, I'm so glad to have you back. Let me just tell you.
Glad to be here, Aaron.
All right, well, take it away. What do we got?
Okay, so as we did before, we're just gonna shine some light on some of the happier things. Of course, with everything that's going on, the Ministry of Health has come out saying that manicure and pedicure, massage places are closed.
Non-essential medical.
If it's not medically necessary,
right,
you can't do it.
Sure.
Well, people are very upset about this, and I understand them. But people have gone on the Facebook page of the Ministry of Health, and they've posted comments, some of which saying, posting pictures of their nails saying, "I can't go on like this. Ministry of Health, you're not getting near my nails." You can
You're telling me that Israeli women are trolling the Ministry of Health?
Oh, they're so angry. They're very upset. They're saying, no, Ministry of Health, I get that this is important, but my nails are more important. Oh, yeah. So they're very upset. They're saying, you can definitely see that the person who made these rules is a man. Oh, yeah. It's pretty funny. People are writing all over Facebook.
Okay, well, as I understand it, there's some more non-essential things that are still happening. Why don't we move on? Mm-hmm. What do we got?
Move on from the nails. Yeah. So weddings have been canceled. Anything with more than 100 people and now more than 10. Have been canceled. So people are doing their own weddings in a different way. Instead of canceling them, they're having them on balconies.
Yeah,
as you can see, people dancing on the balconies. They're all staying far-ish from each other.
I mean, I have to say, I can see that they're trying.
They're trying.
But it's still a pretty big group.
It's still a lot of people in one place, which is not great. But they're doing it on balconies with the band somewhere else. The people have even done it in grocery stores. Wow. Because in grocery stores, the rules are different. You can have more people in a grocery store.
Oh, that's genius.
Yeah, so there was one wedding that happened actually this weekend in a grocery store. So instead of canceling their happy day, they're just doing it a little differently.
Okay, so I know we have one more story.
One more, yeah. So MADA, the Magen David Adom, has come out with a new challenge. As we have the ice bucket challenge and all these different crazy ones. For health. For health. So MADA has made the hashtag Corona Connection Challenge. Okay. Basically just reaching out to people saying, do something kind for someone affected by Corona, whether they're sick or just in quarantine. Stay away from them. They're saying do it safely. Don't go into their home if they're in quarantine, but do something nice for them, whatever it is.
Bring like a gift basket or something.
Leave it on the door, ring the doorbell and run. I don't know. But yeah, just doing kind things for others.
Well, that's a pretty awesome thing to challenge people to do. I think there are a lot of other challenges I think that could have been worse.
Definitely.
Nittany, thank you so much for shining some light here on all this dark clouds that we've got.
My pleasure.
That's it for ILTV's Weekly Review. See you next week.